Live from New Delhi, you're watching DD India, India's voice to the world. I am Ramesh Ramachandran. Coming up in the next hour. India says it has an open mind and positive intent on expansion of BRICS nations. Chandrayaan-3 is on the last leg of its journey as it edges closer to the moon's surface. President Joe Biden of the US to visit Hawaii to assess the damage caused by deadly wildfires. And India announces a 17-member cricket squad for the 2023 Asia Cup. India's Foreign Secretary has outlined the 15th BRICS Summit agenda ahead of Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi's visit to South Africa. Vinay Kwatra says the summit will work on building partnerships for mutually accelerated growth, sustainable development and inclusive multilateralism.
The theme of the BRICS Summit this year is BRICS and Africa, Partnership for Mutually Accelerated Growth, Sustainable Development and Inclusive Multilateralism. This would be the first in-person BRICS Summit after 3 consecutive years of virtual meetings owing to the COVID-19 pandemic.
The Indian Foreign Secretary says that a business delegation from India is traveling to South Africa for the business track of the summit.
The participants are likely to deliberate on issues such as global economic recovery amid ongoing geopolitical challenges, sustainable development goals, something that would, I think, continue throughout the different sessions of the BRICS Summit, women-led development, as also addressing the concern and interest and priorities of the Global South.
India's Foreign Secretary also added that India has positive intent and an open mind regarding the expansion of the BRICS group of countries.
Insofar as the BRICS expansion is concerned, we have been very clear from the start that we have a positive intent and an open mind when it comes to the BRICS expansion. BRICS works under the modality and principle of consensus, and all the BRICS countries have to have full consensus on how they would want BRICS expanded, what should be the guiding principles of that expansion, what would be the criteria for such an expansion. Those are the subject matters of ongoing current discussions between the Sherpas of the BRICS in South Africa.
The Gandhi Tolstoy Farm in South Africa has a message for the BRICS leaders as they get ready to gather in Johannesburg. DD India's Amritpal Singh reports.
2 famous names, Mahatma Gandhi and Count Leo Tolstoy, come together on this blue plaque installed at the Gandhi Tolstoy Farm near Lenasia in South Africa. Mahatma Gandhi set up this ashram and lived here from 1910 to 1914, along with 75 Indian families. It was here he worked on Satyagraha based on ideas of non-violence and simple lifestyle. Tolstoy Farm became one of the cornerstones of South African passive resistance civil rights campaign against Transvaal's discriminatory laws against the Indians.
गांधी जी ने सत्याग्रह की एक्सपेरिमेंट यहाँ की थी कि सब कम्युनिटी यहाँ रह सकते थे, तो इसलिए वो उसने कलम रखने दिया था। 75 फैमिली यहाँ रह रही थी और वो लोग सत्याग्रही थे, वो यहाँ फार्मिंग करते थे।
Gandhiji's message still resonates with the locals here, and they say BRICS leaders should hear it too.
like to request, when the BRICS meet there, they must not forget about the Rastafarians. They are the part and the parcel of this nation, as well as our fellow brothers, that we live with, the Indians. They're part of our...
Well, you see, Gandhi was one of the revolutionists, just like even our Marcus Garvey, who made a significant impact towards global liberation as a people, which he played an important role in liberating the Indian, giving the Indian people a sovereign stance. He was there, he was the voice for them, like our Marcus Garvey was the voice for us. So we respect all nations, and in this time that we're living in, it's time for us to come together as a global family.
This was once a 1,100-acre property where the Satyagraha experiment was born and nurtured. It was here at this historic farm in 1910 where Mohandas Karamchand Gandhi first experimented with the idea of Satyagraha, a peaceful, non-violent movement against an unjust colonial rule, which he later carries to India and implements it there, and India gains its independence. As we stand at this historic farm, the message emanating out of here is that a just, equitable, fair world order is relevant even today in the turbulent times that we live through. With cameraman YK Loknath, this is Amritpal Singh for DD India at the Gandhi Tolstoy farm in South Africa.
The Indian diaspora in Johannesburg is excited to welcome Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi, who will visit the city for the BRICS summit.
I give a warm welcome to our Prime Minister Narendra Modi ji to the Rainbow Nation in South Africa. We are so proud of your leadership, and you are such an inspiring leader.
I am sure India will become superpower in this world. All citizens of India who has got roots in India should be proud of welcoming our Prime Minister to South Africa.
We are also very grateful to the Prime Minister of India for visiting South Africa. He is a role model of the world and he inspires everyone in this world. We hope he has an excellent stay and successful trip in South Africa.
Former South African cricketers are also looking forward to welcoming Prime Minister Modi. South African cricket coach and former player Gary Kirsten extended his well wishes.
Minister Modi, it is my privilege to welcome you and your delegation to South Africa. I've been very fortunate to spend lots of time in India during my playing and my coaching career. I also have many fond memories during my time coaching Team India and was always so grateful for the support of the proud Indian people. This year will also be very special for global cricket when the World Cup returns to India. It promises to be another great sporting spectacle and no doubt will be enjoyed by the millions of cricket fans throughout India. Finally, I wish you and all the global leaders the very best for the upcoming BRICS summit.
Another former South African cricketer, John T. Rhodes, expressed happiness at the Indian Prime Minister's visit.
Namaskar, Modi ji. I have just spent 2 wonderful weeks with my family in incredible India, and now it's our turn to welcome you to South Africa. So, Sawubona, Dumela, Huchanet. I really hope you are well, sir. Welcome for the BRICS conference, and we know as South Africans that you have a massive role on the international political and economic scene, and we thank you for your inputs.
And joining me is DD India correspondent Leon Sinyange from Johannesburg. Leon, over 40 countries, I'm told, have expressed an interest in joining the BRICS. Do we know which countries they are? Why the sudden interest in the BRICS? And should we expect the summit to agree on the expansion?
Well, according to the summit chair, which is South Africa, they've said that over 40 countries have expressed their interest. And like you indicate there, some of these countries across the board, globe, from South Asia to South America and even Africa in itself, some of the countries that are leading that list include Iran, the United Arab Emirates, Saudi Arabia. We also have Argentina and Bolivia from South America. African nations too are in the queue. Egypt, Ethiopia, the Democratic Republic of Congo, and even Gabon. Now, those are forming part of the list that attended a summit here in June to discuss the modalities of being part of this group. Now, their key interest here falls in probably one or two particular issues. One, they want to seek alternatives to the global bodies that exist, and many that have been dominated by the West, but then also the opportunities that the BRICS group provides. BRICS in itself consists about 40% of the global population, 1/4 of the global economy. So there is there's potential for trade, investment, and even business and development for some of these nations. And definitely those fall within some of the reasons why these countries want to be part of this group.
Indeed. And finally, Leon, would the quest for an alternative currency or boosting local currencies be a hot topic of discussion at this year's summit?
Well, certainly, yes. It's one of those topics that are being lined up for discussion here. Now, the currency, the BRICS currency, has been a discussion for quite some time between the BRICS nations. The purpose here, of course, is try to reduce the dominance of the dollar, but then also extend trade between the BRICS nations. But there are critical issues to look at in trying to arrive at this particular currency. And the modalities there, of course, include the economic policies of the members and potentially the partners, the monetary regimes of the countries that are part of this group. But then also, importantly to note, is that the intertrade is still small between the BRICS nations. So many believe that it could take a very long shot to arrive at the development of a currency, but still the efforts seem already straight on and well-purposed to achieving this goal.
All right, Leon, thank you for your input. We'll keep coming back to you over the next few days as well for the latest on the 15th BRICS summit that will take place in Johannesburg, South Africa from the 22nd to the 24th of this month. Remember, the BRICS comprises 5 countries: Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa. And with the exception of President Vladimir Putin of Russia, all the 4 other BRICS leaders would be present in person for the first time since 2019, just before the pandemic, for the first in-person BRICS summit taking place this year, as I said, in Johannesburg, South Africa. And we'll get to the latest over the next couple of days as well. Now, ahead of the BRICS summit, President Cyril Ramaphosa of South Africa says he intends to create positive opportunities, not only for South Africa, but for the entire continent. DD India's Isabel Nakiria has more.
South Africa President Cyril Ramaphosa says the BRICS summit will present opportunities for Africa. The BRICS countries make up one of the world's biggest economic blocs, representing 1/4 of the global economy. President Ramaphosa is pushing for Africa to partner with the bloc and strengthen investment and economic ties. Johannesburg says it supports the expansion of the BRICS, though it's a matter that requires the concession of all members.
The value of BRICS extends beyond the interests of its current members. For its efforts to be effective, BRICS needs to build partnerships with other countries that share its aspirations and perspectives.
Several countries have already expressed interest, and more than 20 have formally applied to join BRICS. President Ramaphosa says there are huge financial opportunities that Africa can gain from the new BRICS Bank. The BRICS Bank has financed multi-billion-dollar projects in South Africa, including clean energy, water infrastructure, and greenhouse gas emission reduction. Isabel Nakiria in Johannesburg, reporting for DD India.
All right, let me take you back to Johannesburg, where my colleague Amritpal Singh is standing by. Amrit, if you can hear me. Now, Indian Prime Minister Modi will spend 3 days in Johannesburg. Do we now have a fair idea of his itinerary in the city? Does he intend to hold separate meetings with the other BRICS leaders on the margins of the summit as well?
That's right. He will hold bilaterals, of course, with the South African President Cyril Ramaphosa, because he's the host. But the Prime Minister is also expected to hold about 7 bilateral meetings with, other BRICS leaders, with his counterpart from Brazil, President Lula. He could also have a short meeting with the Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov. We are not very clear as yet whether if he's meeting the Chinese President Xi Jinping, but that meeting is much anticipated. It is being here at Johannesburg, because it's not just interest in the Indian and Chinese media, but also in the media which has come from BRICS countries, because would these two Asian giants, the leaders of these two Asian giants, India and China, talk to each other and resolve their differences, especially on the flashpoints of Eastern Ladakh, because India has been consistently saying that unless things normalize on the Ladakh border, full normalization of relationship is not possible. So clearly, there is much anticipation with regards to that meeting between President Xi and Prime Minister Modi. We'll get to know whether that meeting happens, because neither of the sides is confirming that as yet.
Indeed, and very quickly, Amrit, India sees itself as a voice of the global south. What's India looking to achieve from the summit in terms of reformed multilateralism, inclusive economic growth and sustainable development?
Well, first from the global south is the voice of the global south. BRICS, as you know, is a grouping of emerging economies. So, strictly speaking, Russia wouldn't fall in the category of the emerging economy. But it is right. The group is seen as the.
All right, Amrit, apologies for the audio disturbance. Thank you for joining us. Appreciate it. Still to come on DD India News Hour. Indian Space Agency ISRO prepares for moon landing on Wednesday. And Denmark and the Netherlands to donate up to 61 F-16 fighter jets to Ukraine. Indian spacecraft Chandrayaan-3 has reached closer to the moon. It's all set to soft land on the lunar surface by Wednesday. Indian Space Agency ISRO has released images of possible sites of soft landing. Meanwhile, Chandrayaan-3 has established contact with Chandrayaan-2 orbiter. If successful, the Chandrayaan-3 will mark India's entry into an elite club of countries that have successfully accomplished lunar landings. DD India's Raghav Kumar Jha reports.
Chandrayaan-3 has started the process of identifying safe landing areas on the surface of the moon. The Indian Space Research Agency ISRO on Monday released images of possible sites. A special camera on board Chandrayaan-3 is locating safe areas without boulders or deep trenches. The Indian Space Research Organization informed that the lander Vikram, that has been orbiting the moon since August 5, has now established two-way communication with Chandrayaan-2 orbiter. According to the Indian Space Agency, the lander module with the rover is likely to touch down on the surface of the moon at around 6:04 p.m. on Wednesday, 23rd August. Chandrayaan-3, which was launched on July 14, is an ambitious mission of ISRO. Its primary objective is putting a lander and rover in the highlands near the south pole of the moon and demonstrating end-to-end landing and roving capabilities. It will also take a number of scientific measurements on the surface and from orbit. Achieving a soft landing is the most challenging part of the mission. If successful, Chandrayaan-3 will mark India's entry into a club of countries comprising the US, Russia, and China that have successfully accomplished lunar landings. Raghav Kumar Jha, reporting for DD India.
Joining me from Mumbai is Dr. Manish Purohit, a former ISRO scientist. Dr. Purohit, welcome to DD India. Now, we are less than 48 hours away from the moon landing. Explain to me, if you will, what will happen between now and 4 minutes past 6 p.m. India time on Wednesday, when the lander will land on the south pole of the moon.
Actually, everything has to happen in this duration only, and specifically in the last 17 minutes when we start the power descent on 23rd of August. Then that's the most crucial part of the whole this mission. And as JPL has put it, it is those 17 minutes of terror. That's what they call it. Because, you know, that is the time when things will go automated. It will be like in totally, completely control of the onboard computer, our algorithms, our sensors, our communication devices, our velocity meters, everything will be controlled and managed by the onboard computer. So if something goes wrong at that point of time, we don't have any chance of recovery. And that's what happened in our Chandrayaan-2 lander. So between that, right now what has happened is we have set up a communication channel with our Chandrayaan-2 orbiter. Chandrayaan-2 orbiter is already in orbit around the moon. It has completed some 10,000 rounds around the moon. And that will be one of the communication channel to the ground stations. Our propulsion module is in the orbit. We will be using that also as a relay for the communication channel. So we have set up the communication channels well, because we don't want to have any communication blackout at that crucial point of time when we are going to touch down on the lunar surface. Now, what's going to happen in those last 17 seconds is very, very crucial, because the whole thing boils down to that part only. This whole exercise is about that soft landing part only. So what will happen when we will be just 25 kilometers above the surface of the moon and somewhere around 750 kilometers away from our landing site, we will take a call. Okay, now that's the time we have to go down and touch down on the lunar surface and create history. We will be the first one to do the soft landing on South Pole, right? So we will fire our thrusters. We are going to calibrate our sensors. We are going to calibrate our cameras, our velocity meters. Everything will get ready, and we will have around 11.5 minutes for doing all that.
Fair enough. Dr. Purohit, will the 2023 landing be similar or different from the Chandrayaan-2 in 2019? I'm sure ISRO would have drawn the right lessons from the previous mission, isn't it?
Yeah. So there are a few changes. And the few changes are on the part of hardware and the software. The trajectory has also tweaked a bit. You know, what happened in Chandrayaan-2 was when our Vikram lander was in a camera costing phase. That is the part when onboard cameras on the Vikram were clicking images of the lunar terrain and comparing with the onboard images. That was around 38 seconds duration phase. We call it camera costing phase. What happened that time in Chandrayaan-2, during this particular part of the journey, errors started to build up. An algorithm, our onboard algorithm, was not able to handle those errors. And due to the buildup of those errors, we lost kind of a control on our lander, and eventually we crash landed. Now, what we have done this time is, first thing we have done is we have reduced the duration of that phase. It was 38 seconds previously, now it is just 10 seconds. That is the one thing. Other thing is we have beefed up our sensors. We have made the system more robust, more powerful, and more faster.
Now, Dr. Purohit, what will the lander do after it lands on the south pole of the moon? How many days will it be on the moon? I mean, what kind of tests will it do? What's the life of this mission in particular?
Okay, so see, once the soft landing part is over, then the landing sensors will raise a command. It will tell the system that we have landed on the moon. Gradually, Vikram will wake up. It will start generating power. It will start checking its systems. And then the ramp will open. The rover will come out. As the rover will move out of the ramp and on the lunar surface, Rover will click the photos, pictures of our lander, and lander will be clicking images of the rover. They will communicate with each other, and that information will be transmitted back on Earth. So this will be the confirmation that rover has come out successfully.
Right.
And then we have some very, meticulously planned in situ experiments and experimental setups that we have. We are going to check about the plasma environment around the lunar surface, because moon doesn't have any environment. So the high energy particles from the sun, they simply bombard on it.
Okay.
That's why the lunar soil is electrostatically charged, because when the high energy sun rays with ultraviolet radiation, everything unmasked, they fall on the lunar surface, they create a plasma, high energy particle kind of an environment. We'll check that. We are going to check the lunar soil. We are going to check the lunar terrain. We have very highly sensitive seismometers which are going to read the moon quakes. Because moon quakes, why we have to read that thing is because sooner or later we are planning to have a base camp there. Because once we confirm the availability of the water...
Indeed, that gives me a perfect segue to my question to you, Dr. Purohit. Does the presence of ice on the moon suggest that humans can live on the lunar surface, that life is possible on the moon?
Okay, so see how this whole big picture is. What we are planning is, as we have International Space Station, so the plan is in the future we will have lunar space stations, and astronauts will be in that lunar space station, and whenever they have to go on for a journey into interplanetary space, right, beyond moon, going towards Mars and all, they will be taking up that journey from the lunar surface. So it will become our base camp. It will be like, stay over and then continue your journey to the interplanetary missions, explore the deep space, come back to the moon. Why? Because moon has lesser gravity, it doesn't have atmosphere, so liftoff of a launch vehicle is easier if you compare it as on Earth, because lesser gravity gives us more possibility of lifting off with more mass, more payload.
Dr. Purohit, thank you so much for sharing your time and your thoughts with our viewers at home and abroad. Appreciate it. And moving on to the Russia-Ukraine conflict, Denmark and the Netherlands agreed to send F-16 fighter jets to Ukraine. More in the next report.
The offer came 2 days after the Netherlands and Denmark said the US had authorized the country to deliver American-made F-16s to Ukraine. Zelensky traveled to both countries to finalize the delivery deal. Dutch Prime Minister Mark Rutte, meeting with Zelensky at a Dutch Airways, said the planes would be delivered once specified conditions are met.
We can announce that the Netherlands and Denmark commit to transfer F-16 aircraft to Ukraine and the Ukrainian Air Force, in close cooperation with the United States and other partners, once the conditions for such a transfer have been met.
Prime Minister Mette Frederiksen said Denmark will supply Ukraine with 19 F-16 fighters during a joint news conference with Ukrainian President at the Skydrupt Airways in Denmark.
We announced that we will donate 19 F-16 fighter jets to Ukraine. Together with the Netherlands, we are the first country to make a solid and concrete commitment to donate Western fighter jets. And hopefully others will follow now.
Ukrainian officials have long asked for the advanced warplanes since the beginning of its war with Russia, which begins in February 2022. Zelensky calls the deal a breakthrough moment, but training for Ukrainian pilots could take months. The first delivery of Danish F-16s is expected around the start of the new year. DD India's Rahul Upadhyay reports.
Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi addressed the Madhya Pradesh Rozgar Mela. PM Modi emphasized that Vishwakarma Yojana has been formulated to adapt the traditional skills as per the need of the 21st century.
आज देश में शिक्षा, कौशल विकास और रोजगार इन तीनों ही स्तरों पर दूरगामी नीति और निर्णय के साथ अनेकविध इनिशिएटिव लिए जा रहे हैं, अनेकविध काम हो रहे हैं। हमारे विश्वकर्मा साथियों के पारंपरिक कौशल को 21वीं सदी की जरूरतों के मुताबिक ढालने के लिए पीएम विश्वकर्मा योजना बनाई गई है। इस पर लगभग 13,000 करोड़ रुपए खर्च किए जाएंगे।
Still to come on DD India Newsa, Hurricane Hillary unleashes flash floods in the western U.S. state of California. And Indian-American Vivek Ramaswamy surges into second place alongside Ron DeSantis in the race to win the Republican nomination.
Welcome to Jaipur.
You're watching DD India Newsa. I'm Ramesh Ramachandran. A quick recap of the headlines. India says it has an open mind and positive intent on expansion of the BRICS nations. Chandrayaan 3 is on the last leg of its journey as it edges closer to the moon's surface. And India names a 17-member cricket squad for the Asia Cup starting 30th August. Tropical storm Hillary has made landfall in the U.S. state of California, where authorities have warned of severe flooding risks from unusual torrential rains. It's the first tropical storm to hit the state since 1939. DD India's Ira Spitzer reports from San Francisco.
Authorities in California, and especially Southern California, are doing everything they can to try and make the public aware of the serious potential danger from Tropical Storm Hillary. And just to give a sense of how unusual this type of storm is, it's been more than 80 years since a tropical storm made landfall in California because of the cool water temperatures in the Pacific Ocean. It's very unusual to have a storm that actually makes it this far in the Pacific. But that is the situation that has happened because of some slightly warmer water brought on by the El Nino weather pattern, as well as some unusual pressure systems. So Hillary was downgraded from a hurricane to a tropical storm when it initially made landfall in Mexico. But the flood risk is very high, according to the authorities. And some of the reasons for that are in the desert areas, especially of Southern California. These are areas that are not accustomed to getting much rain at all, so the ground is not easily able to absorb that kind of water. And for example, in Death Valley National Park, there are forecasts that there could be as much rain in 24 hours in Death Valley as they usually would expect in an entire year. So when you have that sort of torrential rain in these dry areas, flash flooding becomes very dangerous very quickly. So authorities distributing sandbags to residents in a number of counties have made emergency declarations and have certainly urged residents to stay home, not to tempt fate and try and drive around, which really can be especially dangerous when you have standing water on the road. So that is the fear in Southern California right now. And just as things became as the storm was approaching, there was actually an earthquake, a 5.0 magnitude earthquake in the town of Ojai, just an hour north of Los Angeles. So residents already on edge from the arrival of this tropical storm, now had to deal with an earthquake. Now, there have been no reports of serious damage from that earthquake so far, but now the big danger is the possibility of damage to both potentially to property as well as to the population from the flooding, which is to be expected from Tropical Storm Hillary. Ira Spitzer reporting in San Francisco for DD India.
And U.S. President Joe Biden heads to the Hawaiian island of Maui. He will survey the damage caused by wildfires there. Biden will also meet emergency responders, survivors, and community members. He and First Lady will take a helicopter tour of the burnt-out areas. The island continues to grapple with the aftermath of the devastating fires that broke out over 10 days ago. Search and rescue operations remain slow despite ongoing efforts. Officials say 89% of the blaze has now been contained. In a decisive move, Canada has announced the deployment of its military forces to the country's westernmost province of British Columbia, where relentless wildfires have caused an emergency. The escalating infernos have forced more than 35,000 people to evacuate.
In the wake of the sweeping wildfires that have destroyed more than 54,000 square miles, the Canadian military is now intervening. Their mission to quell the aggressive advancement of the fires.
We're active in coordinating with regional and local governments to make sure people are safe, make sure we're doing everything to protect lives and property. But there's a lot more to do, and we're going to continue to stay focused on that.
Amidst the chaos, multiple cities in British Columbia are still grappling with an alarming air quality index, exceeding 350. Normal air quality is usually between 100 and 150. Meanwhile, British Columbia took the decisive step of declaring a state of emergency. This will allow it to facilitate swifter evacuation for displaced citizens. Currently, Canada has also enforced a ban on non-essential travel into the area.
Former U.S. President Donald Trump has said that he will skip this week's first Republican presidential debate, arguing that Americans know him well, so there's no need for a public showdown with his rivals. In a message on his platform called Truth Social, Trump touted what he called a hugely successful record as president and what he described as his popularity among the American people. The first debate in the race for the 2024 Republican presidential nomination is scheduled for Wednesday in Milwaukee in the state of Wisconsin. An unexpected turn of events in the U.S. presidential race. A recent poll has indicated that Florida Governor Ron DeSantis and Indian-American entrepreneur Vivek Ramaswamy are tied for second place in the Republican primary. An Emerson College poll revealed both DeSantis and Ramaswamy have 10% support each, while former President Donald Trump leads with 56% among registered Republicans. It marks a significant decline for DeSantis since June, when he held 21% support. But newcomer Ramaswamy's support has surged from 2% to 10%. And Benji Hai now joins me live from Washington, D.C. Benji, good to see you. What can you tell us about the man and his politics? What explains the surge in Ramaswamy's popularity?
Well, Vivek Ramaswamy, a 38-year-old American-born son of Indian immigrants, in fact, the third Indian-American in this presidential race. His past, though, is not political. This is a man who is a multi-millionaire venture capitalist. He invested, I should say, in pharmaceutical and tech companies, turning them round into success stories. And now he's seeking to, in his eyes at least, repair the country by taking the White House. He states his beliefs very clearly. He tweeted them the other day. Number one, he says, God is real. Number two, there are two genders. And number three, human flourishing requires fossil fuels. In other words, climate change, in his opinion, is a hoax. His views can be controversial. You know, policies including raising the voting age to 25. He claimed that black Americans are better off economically in the 1960s than they are now. He said he'd fire 75% of federal employees, shut down the Department of Education. These aren't just throwaway remarks. They've been repeated multiple times, even in the face of condemnation and ridicule. I've heard him make them myself on calls that he led with the Indian diaspora here. Now, you know, taking all this into account, in background, in persona, he doesn't represent really someone that's typically associated with a Republican presidential candidate. But then again, I think that's the point, because we're now in this era of Donald Trump, and that era has upended almost all norms in US politics. Outsiders like Trump, like Ramaswamy, are seemingly the new favourites, and many other contenders are establishment figures. But Trump has instilled this deep distrust among his base for the establishment, and Republicans are looking elsewhere for inspiration.
Benji, if, as a poll suggests, Trump is the favourite by far, what's Ramaswamy actually playing for? Is he pitching to be the Republicans' next Trump?
It's a good question, and I think it's a really key one now that we know, as you say, that Donald Trump is skipping that Republican Party debate this week. It gives a massive chance for his rivals to seize the spotlight, and an amazing opportunity for Ramaswamy, who's tied in second place with Florida Governor Ron DeSantis. The entrepreneur has, throughout this whole process, clung tightly to Donald Trump. He's billed his own plan as America First 2.0. It sounds familiar, doesn't it? And he's also defended the former president against the indictments that he faces. Trump, he argues, was the most successful president in our century. But I guess here's the thing. This sort of rhetoric is making him popular amongst swathes of primary voters, those who decide the Republican Party's nominee. But you don't necessarily win anything in politics just by being an ally. And bear in mind that Ramaswamy doesn't want to play second fiddle. He's ruled out accepting a position of vice president to Trump or another candidate. So the reality is he'll eventually have to, if he wants to, beat Trump, and to do that distinctly set himself apart from Trump. We're yet to see him do that. Or, of course, there's the second option. Bide your time, wait for the justice system to take down frontrunner Donald Trump in 2024 with his myriad of trials, and then seize the opportunity to take his place and go up against Joe Biden to try to win the Oval Office.
Benji, thank you. That was Benji Haya reporting from Washington, D.C. Moving on, Japan could soon announce when it plans to begin discharging treated water from the wrecked Fukushima nuclear power plant. Prime Minister Kishida Fumio is set to discuss a proposed launch date with his cabinet on Tuesday. Reports suggest that the release could begin as soon as Thursday. The country has accumulated more than 1 million tons of wastewater used to cool the Fukushima nuclear power plant since the 2011 earthquake and tsunami. Chris Gilbert reports from Tokyo.
Yeah, so this has been a long time coming. TEPCO has been planning this water release for 10 years. The disaster, of course, was 12 years ago, and the water has to go somewhere, and the discharge is the solution that they've come up with. It was expected to begin in the spring a few months ago, but was delayed for construction reasons and to get the final report from the IAEA, the International Atomic Watchdog, which the government here requested. And as we know, last month the IAEA effectively said that it meets international safety standards and regulatory standards. Reports just a couple of weeks ago from newspapers here in Japan suggested that the water release after all this time may finally actually begin towards the end of this month or the start of September, but they wanted to wait until after the trilateral summit with South Korea and the United States, which just happened at Camp David over the weekend. Now, straight back from that, here we see the Prime Minister Fumio Kishida straight up to Fukushima, meeting, as you mentioned, with TEPCO officials yesterday at the Daiichi nuclear site. He's expected to be discussing this with Cabinet, so suggestions are that a release date may be imminent.
Saudi Arabia has launched an artificial intelligence-powered program to fulfill its requirements under the so-called Saudi Green Initiative. The kingdom faces the twin challenges of climate change and desertification. The program will study the goals of afforestation projects. The country aims to plant 10 billion trees under the Saudi Green Initiative, along with other projects. And now take a look at some other stories making news around the world. Bernardo Arevalo has achieved a remarkable victory in Guatemala's presidential runoff election. His win, with 58% of the counted votes, serves as a strong rebuke to the conservative political establishment. Arevalo's opponent, former First Lady Sandra Torres, secured 37% of the votes. British nurse Lucy Ledby has been sentenced to life imprisonment for murdering 7 babies. The 33-year-old was also convicted of trying to kill 6 other infants at the Countess of Chester Hospital in the UK. The trial lasted more than 10 months and is believed to be the longest-running murder trial in UK history. Anticyclone Nero is bringing a fresh heat storm to Italy as temperatures hit 38 degrees Celsius in some parts over the weekend. Locals and tourists walking on the streets of Rome were seen struggling because of the new heat storm. And still to come on DD India News Hour, China cuts its key interest rate as recovery falters. And India unveils its 17-member cricket squad for the Asia Cup.
Always welcoming. The vibe of Punjab is larger than life. Warm up to grandeur that's beyond compare. And history that's dotted with tales of bravery. Smiling soul of India, where music, art, cuisine and culture comes together to create an unforgettable impression. Punjab is all set to win your hearts with its unique and colorful extravaganza.
Swagato to West Bengal, India's cultural epicenter.
You're watching DD India News Hour. I'm Ramesh Ramachandran. Let me get you the business news now. All right, I'm told it's time for news from the world of sport with my colleague Anil Thomas.
Well, thank you. The stalemate between the challengers there are Pragyanand and Fabiano Caruana continues in the FIDE World Cup tiebreaker. Game 1 of the tiebreaker ended in a draw after 55 moves. Prag playing black pieces looked down and out. but Caruana made a blunder there in the 55th move to help the Indian escape with the draw. The second round of the tiebreaker has resumed with Pragyanand playing with white pieces, and after 18 moves, still stalemate there on the board. Remember, the winner of this particular tie will face the world number 1 Magnus Carlsen. Grandmaster Carlsen has booked the spot in the FIDE 2023 World Cup final after winning his match against Nijat Abusov by a margin of 1.5 to 2 points. India has unveiled a 17-member squad for the forthcoming Asia Cup. Shreyas Iyer, KL Rahul make a return to the Indian dressing room.
India announced its 17-member travelling squad for the 2023 Asia Cup on Monday, followed by a press conference from Captain Rohit Sharma and Chief Selector Ajit Agarkar in Delhi. Wicketkeeper batter KL Rahul and middle-order batter Shreyas Iyer make a return to the squad, which includes Hyderabad batter Tilak Verma. While Verma has been included as an additional batsman, fast bowler Prasidh Krishna returns after a long injury layoff. Ishan Kishan was chosen over Sanju Samson as the second wicketkeeper. But Samson will travel to Sri Lanka as a reserve player. The full squad are Rohit Sharma, Shubman Gill, Virat Kohli, Shreyas Iyer, KL Rahul, Kuldeep Yadav, Surya Kumar Yadav, Tilak Verma, Ishan Kishan, Hardik Pandya, Ravindra Jadeja, Prasidh Krishna, Akshar Patel, Shardul Thakur, Jasprit Bumrah, Mohammad Shami and Mohammad Siraj. India will face off against arch rivals Pakistan in a Group A match on September 2nd in Kandy. Nepal is the other team grouped alongside India and Pakistan. With the ODI World Cup in sights, India's performance in the continental tournament will be key to their chances at the marquee event later this year at home. Sports Desk, DD India.
Moving to tennis, the 7-seed Coca Gauff beat Karolina Machkova 6-3, 6-4 to win the biggest title of her young career at the WTA Cincinnati Open. Coco broke the Czech 3 times in the opening set and confidently served the opener to love in her first WTA 1000 final appearance.
Champion Coco Gauff.
In the men's final, Novak Djokovic overcame a match point to beat world number 1 Carlos Alcaraz in 3 sets, 5-7, 7-6, 7-6 to win the ATP Cincinnati Open. The win delivered Djokovic his 95th career title and 39 Masters 1000 crown. He will look to add a 24th Grand Slam trophy to the collection at the upcoming US Open in Flushing Meadows. Manchester City cruised to their season opener victory with a win there under their belt with the help of Julian Alvarez's stunning strike, earning a deserved 1-0 win over Newcastle. With this victory, City sit on the second spot in the points table. Aston Villa claimed 3 points in the Premier League as they beat Everton 4-0 on Sunday. John McGinn, Douglas Lewis, Leon Bailey and John Duran scored for Villa to secure an emphatic win for them. Bouncing back from a heavy Newcastle defeat, Villa now look to keep their winning streak going. Up next for Everton is a huge match next Saturday against fellow winless side Wolverhampton, who have also lost both their games so far. Well, that's all we have time for in this edition of News and Sports Updates. Back to Ramesh for more updates.
Just a quick question, Anil. How does Pragyananda's run in the World Chess semi-final look to you?
Well, it's been stupendous. He's just completed 10 days back. The run that he's had, he's beaten the world number 2, that's Nakamura. He's taking on world number 3. If he wins this, he takes on the world number 1. With the world number 1 clearly indicating he's not going to be part of the candidates tournament. So he's almost certain to play there. And after Anand, any player to reach this particular stage at the semi-final. So clearly, things look good for Pragyanand. If he can overcome this, he's playing white, 18 moves down in the second tie break. If things go well, we could see him play the final against Carlsen.
Thank you, Anil. All right, let me get you some business news now. China has decided to keep its key mortgage pricing benchmark interest rate unchanged and has cut the bank's only one-year loan prime rate to support the economy further. The spot yuan opened at 7.29 per dollar and weakened to 7.3 by midday. After 4 sessions of losses, I'm told that we'll get you some more business news in just a bit. But the news coming in is that we are approaching the end of our time here on DD India News Hour. Thank you so much for your time. Appreciate it. Bye-bye.